So I don't know why it's not working, but that's not your problem.
Well, hopefully, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. My husband.
And we can hear you too. So we're all good. All right. And
Okay, good.
and everyone, just a reminder, we do record this session. So if you don't want to be on video or audio, by all means, feel free to not do that. But you're also welcome to stay on, and we're looking forward to people's great questions today too.
Excellent, excellent. We got a special guest here in the U.S. We've got this athlete, actually a couple athletes, Alex Smith and Dustin Johnson. And today he's posing as Nick Leader, who sells for 6 cents. So Nick, thanks for making time, and we'll give you a proper introduction in a moment. But usually we kick off with our weekly poll, and this week's poll was in and around analytics, and I'm sharing on my screen here. And the question was, who does the work to measure internally? A large majority, when I gave the choice of a dedicated analyst, which is a real luxury depending on company size, marketing ops being by and large the keeper of the analytics, RevOps, which I'm seeing increasingly interest in that. And there were some really good comments on this from Mark here, who talks, actually, I think he sent on this one first, where he was saying there's a difference between an analyst and a data scientist and marketing ops. And I thought this was a really interesting point, in that Mark probably sees this from a much larger, like Global 2000 or a bigger company viewpoint of being able to kind of slice and dice. I know in the mid-sized markets that we focus on, it's an extreme luxury to have an analyst that can do the numbers and the analytics. But I think his point is really well taken, that there are very, very different skill sets here to do the measurement. And what did he say in here? I think he said data doesn't say anything about the why. So having, some context on that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know, Megan, do you have any thoughts on this and what you've seen? Or
yeah, I mean, frankly, not surprised, right? I mean, if we're asking about who does marketing measurement, if you have marketing ops, that's who's going to be in charge. What I was excited to see 11% choosing RevOps, because I personally think if you're looking at this as, you really need alignment across sales, marketing, and customer, right? You need that whole revenue team working together. They need to be sharing data, and they need to have aligned measurement. Therefore, I think the RevOps function with capabilities in marketing ops, sales ops, and customer ops that support the unique requirements of those functional areas, but who work together and also have some points of intersection and shared data and tech and that kind of thing. It's just a perfect fit for where we need to be going. So I'm excited to see that coming up more. But yeah, and I think Mark's points are well taken on the kind of skills you need. I hear that all the time, right? And I see it all the time in marketing measurement, where you've got people measuring things, and I'm not going to fault the fact, yes, you are providing information about what happened. But what you are not always providing is information about why and what we've learned from it and what we're going to do differently as a result, right? And I think that's the piece that we have to help make it easier for people to do the measurement work, right? Make it more automated, make it easier to get to the information, so that you can spend more time talking about the why. I think that's the problem, is it takes forever to actually build the basics, right? And then you don't have time to go and spend time thinking about the whys. So that would be my hope for the future, is this is easier so we can spend time thinking and not just building.
Kanoko brings up a great point too about the where it reports into, and I don't know if you want to come off mute or not, but remind me again, do you guys work, I think you work for RevOps, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Kanoko?
Yes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Good. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Kanako. I'm Marketing Operations Manager at Alice. And as John said, I'm currently reporting into Revenue Ops instead of sitting under marketing umbrella. So that's a big difference in general, as well as when we do the marketing measurement and communicating the outcome. So at least in my company, the RevOps leader himself is coming from sales operation background, not strongly from the marketing side of the background. So what he asks to me is sometimes quite different from what marketing leaders would ask me. So eventually, I love to put both sides together at the same table so that we all communicate in the same language and look at the numbers same way. But because of the background and where we are coming from, sometimes what they care, even truly at the bottom of the heart, is just different. So yeah, I kind of serve two dimensions sometimes. And it comes back to your point, Megan, that like why we are looking at this data, why we are reporting out this data, it's really dependent on like who we marketing ops is actually serving the data for and to.
Yeah, Kanako, thank you for that. I feel like we need to have a session on RevOps soon because it's so interesting, right? But your point, and often, I mean, data does show that most of the time the leader of RevOps is sales ops, which means they're going to have a bias, which it has good and bad, right? I think there's opportunity there.
I think the RevOps function is new too, Megan. Like it's almost like in AB, like you didn't see account-based marketers 5-6 years ago, and now all of a sudden there's a plethora of them. It's the same thing with RevOps. Like someone's doing that RevOps job, but it's probably not coming with the title of director, VP of revenue operations. But more and more people are now opening roles for that. I think I've seen, or like aligning their teams. Like I have some friends at shout out to the awesome people at Gigamon. They just rolled all of their people into a RevOps team, customer ops, marketing ops, sales ops, roll into like a, the same leader now. So I think that's something that'll probably continue to happen.
Cool. Thank you for that. Well, and this is a great moment to introduce our amazing special guest today. John, you want to do the honors?
Yeah, sure. And Nick, thanks for joining us from California today. We are excited to have you. And I think it's pretty appropriate too. We're talking about RevOps and marketing ops, and Nick has the unique experience starting off his selling career at the Net Prospect / Dun & Bradstreet when they got acquired. And then you somehow duplicated that success at Engagio. You were there through the acquisition as well. And then some work at Lean Data. So you've sold to RevOps, which is very, very valuable. And you've sold to marketing ops, both, in your prior life and your current life at 6 Sense. So you've got a really, really unique perspective. And I would imagine as a marketer, I would probably want to take your call ahead of others just because you've had that ABM perspective that others, if they truly listen, which is, it's tough to get marketers to listen, and I'm one. So, I get that, but you've got some really, really unique experience.
Can I get that recording, John, so I can put that in my prospecting emails?
Exactly.
I mean, that would help me out tremendously, honestly. Yeah. So I'll take you up on that. No, yeah. I mean, I like you said, I started my career in data, and I think at the time I didn't know it, but looking back 8 years later, I think I consider myself pretty lucky to just jump right in the deep end of the data world, like right out of the gate, not really knowing much and being a BDR, because I think the data powers everything. That's what I learned like right away, and it's only becoming more so, as time goes on. Whereas before, I was selling like a lot of lists. People would just, I need 500,000 contacts. Like next week, I got a campaign, and I just need to pump them out. And that was when Marketo and Eloqua and HubSpot and those things were big. Now people are getting super, super smart about that. So it's interesting to see the shift, but I still think that all companies are just powered off of data. And if you don't have your data in a good spot, that sort of crumbling foundation starts to impact every aspect of the revenue function, no doubt.
Yeah, amen to that one for sure. I mean, there's, if he or she with the best data wins, right? I think in the end, at least now, but actually, no, I'll take that back. He or she with the best data who actually does something with it wins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's one thing to build up a big bank account, but then you got to spend it on fun stuff. That's the thing I like to say. If you're not using the data, then it's collecting dust. Shelfware.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know one of the promises of the conversation today was to talk about sales and marketing alignment, and I've had the pleasure of working with you in that capacity. You were on the sales team, and then I was part of the marketing team. And my experience was that you were actually one of our great partners in terms of helping to keep the marketing organization informed, challenged in a good way, right? To do the right thing and do smart things and focus on things that will matter. I think, you've had some really great experience partnering with marketing organizations. I think both in selling to them and helping them, get benefit from new technologies, but also just kind of in your day-to-day life. What can you share? We've got some great marketers on the line today. Would love for you to share your advice on how that relationship can be effective and what kinds of things you would encourage them to do to help improve that relationship with their sales friends. I'll go that far.
Friends, very much so friends. I think, I'll tell a quick story, then I'll sort of get into some of the things I've learned. But like you said, I came from Dun & Bradstreet, and pretty big company all over the world. And when I started at Engagio, I mean, we were 50 something people in a one room office almost. And I had a meeting on my calendar with the head of field marketing. And I just thought it was some onboarding thing because I was new. And I was so taken aback because I walked into that conference room and she's like, hey, I want to help you break into your accounts. It's probably premature since you're like on your 4th day here, but that's fine. But we run these meetings every 2 weeks, and they call them ABM stand-ups. And so it's myself, my business development rep, and then my field marketer. And we talk about your accounts, and I want to help you break in. We can run programs, who you going after, like anything that we can do, I want to help you. And I was like, eh? Like that was a foreign language almost. But after I got into a couple of those sessions, I mean, that stuff works. That's the thing that I think opened my eyes, like right out of the gate, is I was getting meetings from being creative and working with marketing. And it wasn't just like brute force 100 phone calls every day, to the same people that everyone's calling on. And so there was so many creative things that we did, sending donuts to people, sending surfing books to people, trying to just like figure out if they did a talk and something they mentioned. I mean, it was amazing. And I just like totally leaned into that, and it 100% paid off. And so I am a believer. And it's why I sell this stuff, because I know that the technology that supports that collaboration, works to change a business. I mean, it changed my pipeline and my quota. I closed more deals because of marketing, and it wasn't just because they were running an event or they were, advertising or something like that. It was like that cross collaboration that I just found, I found really cool, quite frankly. And so that's what got me hooked. But I mean, in terms of like some of the things I've learned, so I think you have to ask yourself, like, what would be a win for you? Like, what are you looking to get out of that sales and marketing alignment? Because that whole conversation of not just casting a wide net and being reactive to when things come inbound, like now that whole motion of going out to get the accounts that you want and game planning around those is something that account-based, mindset, and then certainly technology kind of enabled. But that one-to-one relationship that I had with my field marketer and my BDR, like, I understand that that's very much so a luxury, and like that's not practical at a majority of the organizations that we talk to, especially when going into the larger enterprise. Not even enterprise. I mean, a few hundred people. If you have a few dozen reps, I mean, you feasibly can't sit down one-on-one with every single person. And so I think there's like two flavors of that alignment. It's not just working closely together, it's enabling each other to, and it sounds kind of corny because it's a buzzword, but like at scale, like personalization at scale. I can't believe I just said that, but I did. I think what that means is like you have to take what you could do together one-on-one with a rep and a marketer sitting in the same room and enable dozens or hundreds of sellers and marketers to do the same thing together without having that collaboration. So that's where I think technology, like the people who come to an account-based vendor, it doesn't matter who it is, have like tried, they've been burned by like, man, this is like, I know this can work, but I don't know how to scale this. Or like, we're doing this with 10 accounts, but I want to do this to every account, or I want to do this to 100 accounts. And I don't have the power to hire or the budget to hire, 20 more field marketers. And so that's where I think technology comes in. But so many conversations over the past 3 or 4 years have started with that statement. It's like, I have tried to do this manually, and quite frankly, it sucks. And so I need to get better at doing this. And so I think that's one of the things I've learned is, I think you have to ask yourself, what are you looking to get out of a technology purchase? Is if you're buying technology to solve the problem, that's not going to work. Unfortunately, that's the case in some scenarios. But if you have a strategy that you then go identify where can technology plug the gaps of what we're able to manually do as a sales or marketing team, I think that's where people become successful, is they're proactively working together to create this alignment. And then they're going and saying, now we're going to blow this up. Let's, gas on the fire. So I think that's important. And I don't think people necessarily admit that they might not have the strategy in place, as nailed down as they might think they do.
What are some of the ways that you start that conversation with customers, right? Because that's something that I really appreciate about your approach, is that you're honest, right? Like, you're saying, hey, I can sell this to you, but there's a couple of things that are going to make it more successful than not, because ultimately you want them to achieve impact, which I think is, it is a hallmark of a really great seller. Like, what are some of the ways you start that conversation if you're getting an inkling that maybe this is a tech without strategy direction?
I think you have to, before diving into the feature function of what your tool does, I think you have to spend time and slow down the process. My boss will probably listen to this and be like, dude, no, no, he gets it though. We had a meeting about this the other day, but I think that's super important, because if you can't understand what that company is going through, you can't effectively sell. And this isn't just in marketing. You can't effectively sell what your technology, what the outcomes you're looking to drive. I think getting to know the company and coming in with perspective about the business and understanding you've got a huge addressable market, and how do you point your sellers in the right direction, or how do you turn on marketing to optimize the spend from your campaigns that you're running? You can't just do that to a million companies, and it's not finger in the wind, oh, I want to go get this logo because it's a cool logo. So I think that's one important piece, is coming with a perspective and trying to figure out what are they actually trying to do, and then how can technology sort of solve that is super important. And if that does slow your deal down, I would hope that the customer can sort of reciprocate or appreciate anyways, your interest and curiosity in trying to help their team. But it is interesting if you start asking some of the questions that we're sort of told to ask. It becomes pretty apparent whether or not people have their stuff together, so to speak. But from an account-based perspective, I think you have to involve sales too. If you're not talking to the sales leadership and the marketing team, whether it's separate conversations or together, or they won't introduce you. I've had those conversations hey, I would love to talk to Jim and Timmy, because, this is account-based marketing, and now people call it account-based experience or whatever the new things that are getting thrown out are. But, I would love to have that conversation to see how we can help their teams. And if they're no, this is a marketing project, that's a red flag, in my opinion, because it has to be that coordination with one another.
You're kind of highlighting it here, but just thinking about it from a selling perspective, and you in your day-to-day role on the insight piece, what's been most helpful for you, or what are the trends that you're seeing on insights that you feel would be valuable to your peers on a selling perspective, or that marketers could be enabling their sales team with?
Yeah, well, one of those I think started with with my time at Lean Data, where I sort of recognized the importance of a lot of the people who are interested in lead routing, let's say, were the operation. Sure, there's marketing operations, no doubt, but a lot of those conversations started with the sales enablement or revenue enablement teams or operations teams. But I was always curious why we never, and this isn't a Lean Data thing, this is the technologies, that space. But man, if I'm a CMO or a VP of marketing, I'm working hard to pump these leads to my sales team or drive traffic to my website, or, the end goal obviously is to have someone fill a form. But why wouldn't I care about the second half of that as much as the first half? Because if I spend all this money getting someone to submit a demo request, and I don't care about making sure that demo request is followed up with in a timely manner, and it goes to the right team, and the experience for that customer is correct. So if they're already a customer, don't send them to a BDR because they're on the pre-sale side and this person's a customer, but maybe it's another division of that company. So getting smarter about enabling your sales team to get on top of those leads and creating that internal experience, I think is like hugely important. So that was always one thing that I was relatively interested in. It seemed tough to get a VP or a CMO's ear to buy into lead routing. So that was, I think, one thing. And some of the things I'm seeing being at 6 Sense and getting back into the ABM space is, it started with, the marketing automation tools, cast a wide net, push as many people into your net at the top of the funnel as possible. And then that shifted to an account-based motion where it's like, okay, that's kind of plateauing. So how do we get smarter about this? Okay, let's go get the accounts that are going to be our best customers. And it's like the outbound motion. And now it's almost shifting to this like predictive, I want to get way ahead of that. Like I want to try and find out as soon as someone's sniffing, in the air about what my solution solves for, like I need to act on that. And that could be on the marketing side. So, they're surging on intent topics, or they're, coming to our website, or they're interacting with campaigns. Now I'm turning on advertising and I'm turning on programs and trying to surround them with that, always on type of marketing. But then I'm giving sales that same information so that they can go and try and position themselves effectively to get out in front of that account or the buying team first. 50% of the deals go to the person who gets in the door first. And so now I think there's this, okay, account-based is sort of becoming not table stakes, but it's very widely adopted. And so what can we do next? And that's where I think moving faster becomes key. And how do you move faster? You sort of get into those deals as quickly as you possibly can. Not necessarily opening an opportunity, but getting your name in front of the people when it's the right time. I think is something that people are seemingly shifting to more and more lately.
Nick, you just said something that I'm seeing in a number of clients right now, which is he or she who gets in the door first wins, right? And I think that's, and the reason I'm seeing it is because we're seeing, when folks sort of wait to be reactive to sort of later stage inbound, and they're not out in front setting the terms of how that customer understands the potential of the solution and gives them a different or sort of unique way to look at the way that their solution can solve for their need, right back to your point about be relevant to the thing they're trying to do. You've lost that opportunity. And we actually had some data at Sirius, back a couple of years ago. I think they've updated the study since then. But what it basically said was sellers who got into the deal earlier did in fact win more often. So like if you make that old assumption of marketing's the top of the funnel, then it goes to a BDR, then it goes to sales, and then, no, if the seller was involved early, and marketing too, by the way, like if it was that partnership you're talking about, if they were both working together to set the terms of that customer's understanding and kind of sales, the progression of their decision cycle, they were much more likely to win. They hit quota more. It was super interesting anyway, but what you just said really is standing out to me is like, how do you help people get out in front of that customer very early, even before they know they need, right? Help them identify a challenge that they have. Some of that classic brand stuff is starting to be really meaningful anyhow, but I'm totally keeping an eye on the chat too, if folks have questions. If anyone wants to jump in.
I can say from a rep's perspective, like if I get into a deal and that first conversation, they're like, oh, tell me what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, we're talking to A, B, C vendor. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be a slog. This is going to be a slog. Because everyone has their little competitive, differentiators. And if you're not planting the seeds as to why your competitive differentiators are more important than others, assuming that aligns with the priorities that the customer is kind of interested in anyways, it's downhill sledding. It just makes it so much easier to get in that deal, because then everyone else becomes the column fodder and you're the one who's setting the agenda and being like, I would ask about this, or what about this component? And so, how do you get into those conversations first? It's with all the signals that now these platforms are able to tell you. And so I absolutely think if you're not leveraging that information, you're already, behind out of the gate. You're starting a lap behind, because people are doing this and they're doing it really well already. and you see the proven success with like these customers who win all these serious awards and all these different program of the year, like those are the ones who are leveraging technology to get them there. And it's no surprise that the people who IPO and are growing fastest are the ones who are unlocking the potential of what technology can do for them.
So Pam, you had a question here. Not sure I understand how to phrase it as a question though. So you're looking for creative ways to get people that are in the database that are marketable to, or maybe you can restate that.
Yeah, they're not yet in the database. Like for instance, you get a list of key contacts, and if they're not in our database, they're, with privacy and all that, it's like, okay, we can't add these to Salesforce kind of thing. So I was just wondering if anyone's cracked creative ways with all the privacy and all that to be. I know obviously there's one-to-one communication, but it's just something I'm trying to solve for.
Wow,
we
great question.
don't advise it, but we've seen in a couple of our prospects, not client cases, where they've used Graymail and they've reached out via a third-party provider to do the emailing off IP, off of it. It looks like the company, but it's like a separate IP address. So if it gets dinged on deliverability or spam, you're hurting the Graymail provider as opposed to your sales, outreach, SalesLoft, Marketo, or whatever the system would be. That's one way that I've seen it done. I'm sure others have seen it done elsewhere.
Okay, it's called Graymail. Okay.
Yeah, and you could almost I don't know if SendGrid still does that. SendGrid got acquired, I think, by Twilio, or it's been a while since I've looked into that. But there are providers out there that have different infrastructure that you can run in parallel.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I'm
But I
asking
would advise skirting the law, but that's how I've seen.
Right. Yeah. 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 Because I've got this list, and it's like a list of gold, and then you're sitting there going, okay, we can't just add them
Right.
to our database because they're deemed to have not have opted in, kind of thing.
Are they in Europe? Are they in the US or California? Or
they're all over they're global, but the company that I'm targeting is headquartered in the US. So
I mean, there's the other gray area too. In the US, I think it's less of an issue to kind of, you run as long as you're compliant with CAM spam. Now, your state is a little bit different from everybody else's state. But I think outside of that, it flies close to the sun, but you could probably get away with it in the US. It's outside the US that runs a bigger risk. But I don't know if others are seeing that.
Well, and we've got an interesting question before we close that I think, Nick, this might be a good one for you to talk about. So Alexei is asking, do you see a function of data researcher in the chain of marketing, BDR, sales? So kind of part of that grouping. And that's the person who's helping with account planning, enriching contacts, collecting insights on the accounts. Nick, how do you see that resource today?
Data researcher is in, providing sort of factual information on that company, for example.
Yeah, just really, helping to provide you, this to me looks like a list of the things that I would want for account information, right? And even contact information. What do you, who's helping with that right now, if anyone, or is that still the homework of the people on the account team?
I think from what I've seen, that's the homework of the people on the account team a little bit, is to put together these account plans. If I had someone to do that for me, that would be fantastic. But I don't know what the reality of that actually coming to light is. That's where I think in lieu of a data researcher, like where technology can sort of come in handy to provide that type of data or intel. As a salesperson, I'm like a someone who makes a puzzle. Like I just want as much information in front of me as possible, and I get paid to go act on that information. And so the more stuff that I can get funneled into me, in terms of like the intent topics, the websites being viewed, the content of the campaigns being interacted with, like just give me all of that. And then I'll go sort of attack or put together a game plan that I can attack based on what messaging I'm outbounding with. Am I tapping marketing to help me? Is my BDR doing this? Like, I think that's important. But yeah, I do right now all the account plans and trying to find contacts for the most part, and just game planning on what we're doing to get into one of these accounts.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to share, I just met with this really interesting company yesterday, OpEx Engine, and they have a tool that aggregates public financial filings, US public financial filings, So like if you're working on an account and you want all of their, sort of past financial history, they've done it. Like it's all up there. It's amazing.
Yeah. That power of data, baby.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean,
it all comes
there's
back
so
to
many
data.
different providers. Yeah, there are so many people out there providing some facet of data. I think the key is like, how does that plug into the overall, mothership, so to speak? But
Yeah,
I mean,
for
there's
sure.
like that, OpEx engine. I mean, that would be fantastic, to sort of have at your fingertips without
They're just
having
like,
to go
hey,
actively
what
search for
happened
it.
over the last 5 years or 2 years or whatever, however long they've been public, you can go in and see it. I was like, ooh, that's a neat little feature. The first thing I thought of was like, if I was an AE, I would love this. But
100%.
Anyway, well, I know we are at time. John, anything you want to close with?
No, Nick, thanks for making it early in the morning there, and appreciate your insights. It's been super helpful.
Absolutely. Yep. Happy to help too. If anyone has follow-up questions, I'm an open book when I can be.
Well, thank you,
Excellent.
Nick.
So we're off next week, Megan, right? We're with the holiday. So I think we resume in 2 weeks with,
well, we're not that guest. We have a question mark on that one.
oh, got it. Okay. So, but you and I will be here in 2 weeks. We don't know
Yeah.
with whom yet. a
Yes,
mystery guest. We got to spin this. It's a mystery guest.
A mystery guest.
We had the athlete this week. Now, the mystery one will be in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but we'll wish everyone. So for folks who are in the US, it's the Memorial